Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the Gamemax Abyss Mini, a small form factor PC with a lot of RGB. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we're taking a look at the Gamemax Abyss Mini. This is the micro-ATX version of the very popular Gamemax Abyss E-ATX case, which this actually has taken a lot of features from the original Abyss, such as obviously the front panel mirrored section with the infinity glass, and added a few extra bits and pieces to make it a slightly more palatable experience for micro-ATX builders. So we're going to go through today, do a teardown of the case, take a look at some of the options, features, etc., see how it all works, and then at the end of the video come back with my final thoughts. So let's start off straight away with the front panel. So this is a infinity mirror. Obviously it isn't lit up at the moment, but you'll see from some B-roll it does look absolutely stunning. And I'll be honest with you, that is probably the key selling point why people go for this case, or possibly the Abyss, the larger version of it. So you can fit in here up to 6 120mm fans, you can fit in 240mm radiators, and it comes in at a relatively modest price these days of around about £50 here in the UK. In the back of the case, you've got roughly about 25mm of cable management. You can fit in here roughly about 160mm CPU coolers. You can also fit in regular ATX power supplies. You've got 2 removable caddies for hard drives or SSDs, and you've got a built-in addressable RGB and fan hub. It also comes included with a standard 120mm addressable RGB fan at the back there. So pretty much out of the box, it's ready to go in terms of cooling. For those of you that are concerned about the airflow in this case, yeah, I share your concerns also. So this clearly isn't designed for high airflow situations, but there is a little bit of airflow which comes in from the front panel. So there's a perforated side down here and also on the back as well. Also the grab handle at the bottom is totally open, so it can pull in a little bit of air should it need to. Of course, for most people, you'll probably find this is going to work out better with a negative airflow setup. So having some exhaust fans on the top and also from the rear, and then pulling in air wherever it can. The front panel itself is relatively well done actually, in my opinion. There's not too many cables actually attaching it to the rest of the chassis, and just grabbing the grab handle on the bottom you can pull the front panel off. And as you can see behind it there is a solid section, although it is spaced out a little bit, so there is a little bit of airflow gap around the sides, and you can see here now we've got room, if you want to add 3 120mm fans, or alternatively you can fit in a 240mm radiator. Unfortunately 360s won't be possible, there just isn't enough clearance down at the bottom section where this basement is. I think for most people 2 120mm fans will be absolutely fine. Obviously you can't see them at all from the front because this is blanked off, so it's not going to look slightly odd just having 2 fans populated in the front. A nice inclusion now for this particular version is the side panel. So the side panel is actually hinged, so only 2 thumb screws to remove, and if you grab at the bottom there's a little indentation so you can grab the glass, and the glass will swing out and pretty much open completely fully, so you can gain access to all your parts for doing any maintenance, cleaning, all that kind of stuff, and giving you a good look inside. The panel itself can actually be removed, so just lift it up and it comes off of the mounts on the back there. And they are actually adjustable as well, which is a nice thing to see. Sometimes on cases those hinges are actually riveted in, whereas these are just screwed, so if you want to make some minor adjustments then you certainly can do. Some of you may feel that you do need to do that because when you actually close the glass it doesn't kind of line up quite well, so the fit and finish isn't perfect on this, so you do need to lift the glass up slightly and then push it in onto the rubber mountings. Not the end of the world, and you probably will be able to adjust that out from the screws on the back should you feel the need to. Also, the glass has no tint to it at all, it's pretty much clear. There is protective coatings on it, and also it's nice to see that you've got a black surround all the way around to hide fingerprints from when you're grabbing the actual glass. Taking a look inside, it's a relatively cavernous affair and will fit even the larger of the micro-ATX motherboards, as you've probably seen from some B-roll. I put in an Asus B550 M-K in here a little bit earlier, which is probably one of the widest boards other than things like the B550 Pro VDH Wi-Fi from MSI, which does take up the full width and it fits in there very easily. What is also nice is the fact that at the top they've added a little bit of extra height in there, so if you do want to put a radiator in the top, which potentially you might want to, there's enough room for a radiator and fans if you're using a 240mm AIO, and it won't obstruct the motherboard or the RAM or the VRMs. Also inside there's options for mounting other drives in here, so if you want to put an SSD or a mechanical 2.5-inch drive you can mount it on here, although you may need to take into account the size of your motherboard and also where you're going to be passing through the main power cable. That may disrupt that. At the bottom, there's some pretty cool stuff going on. So there's some ventilation for the drives at the bottom, which is actually a nice little addition. You've got some massive cutouts at the bottom to get your cables through for HD audio, USB, USB 3, and your front panel I/O, all that kind of stuff. There's also some little cutouts here and screw holes, which I wasn't entirely sure what that was for, but they do actually include a cool VGA bracket. So this is for supporting your graphics card. So there's a little thumb screw on the end so you can adjust that. There's foam pads on there to support the graphics card and also protect it from touching the metal. So you can slide that up and down however you want to, and just screw it into the base, and you can put it there, basically wherever you want to. I'll be honest with you, it's not the prettiest GPU support I've ever seen in my life, but certainly it will get the job done. While we're actually looking at the accessories bag, so obviously you get all the usual stuff, so you get all your screws and mountings. Something which I found a little bit odd, and actually I haven't seen for a very, very long time, is one of these. So this is a little plastic standoff. So these are designed for if you've got a wider board. You can see I've already installed a couple of those here. And these just screw into the back of the actual frame, and you will need a 7mm socket in order to do this. Be a bit careful because obviously it is only plastic, but it's actually quite handy, and it does mean that you can add wider boards in there and support them. Also in the accessories there is a rainbow cable. So this is a 3-pin 5V addressable RGB. So if you've got a motherboard that has its own header on it, you can connect this to your motherboard and then connect the other end of the cable into the RGB hub, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. There's also all the usual stuff you'd expect. So there is a installation guide, and also there's a little pamphlet, or basically a piece of paper, telling you exactly how the hub works, which could be quite handy for some beginner builders. Also at the back of the case you can see there is the included addressable RGB fan. So that's one of Gamemax's own. I think it's an NF120W or something. I'll try and put some links for those in the video description, so if you want to add more. There are a ton of different fans which will work with this and also with the hub. So Gamemax do some really good ones actually for about £3.88 I found recently. We've done a video on that as well, which you can check out. You can basically populate this whole thing for about 20 quid's worth of fans, which is really awesome. So over on that inside, not really a great deal else to talk about. Graphics card wise, again, you've got plenty of length there because you're unlikely to be having a 360mm radiator in there, maybe a couple of fans or something. You can get a longer length in there. They do state on the actual box itself that you can have up to 310mm GPU support, but I've found in other places they're saying it's 290mm. So again, depending on what graphics card you're using, you may want to check into that. If you're not entirely sure and you want to know, then we will be doing a full build on this in our live stream. So if you've got any comments or questions on that, you can check out that live stream, and chances are we'll probably cover it. On the basement section, so you've got a cutout there. So if you want to see your power supply, branding, etc., then you can do from there. Personally, I'd probably rather see that completely enclosed. They have put the Gamemax logo on there, relatively neutral. So the Gamemax writing is in white. The Gamemax logo obviously being in green, which is a little bit detracting, but not the end of the world. On the back of the case, so you can see there is a section here, so you undo those two screws. That gives you access to the PCI Express brackets on the back, 3 of which are captive, 1 of which is removable. So it would have been nice to see all of those be removable, although if you want to buy removable blanking plates, you can pick those up for a couple of pounds should you need to. At the bottom, size for a full-size ATX power supply. Also got a cutout here for the 120mm fan. Is only 120mm, no options for 140 sadly. Everything around the I/O shield is nicely cut out and no problems there. Moving around to the back side, so you can see there is actually the Gamemax logo embossed onto the rear, which is a nice addition, not really necessary, but certainly does add a little bit of flair to it. 2 thumb screws to take off the back panel, so just undo those and the back panel slides off relatively easily. It's relatively strong, no problems there. And taking a look into the back, we can see there's a whole mess going on here already, even though there's nothing in here, but it's relatively straightforward to manage. So key things, you've got a pass-through at the top. Now this is something which I was a little bit concerned about. So if you are building in this, obviously EPS connection for your power supply, the 4-pin, 8-pin or 8+4 should you need to. That is going to have to go through this channel here. You potentially could run it up behind the motherboard. Would have been nice to have seen another cutout over in this corner, but because you've got the strengthening section here for the actual frame, then unfortunately it is moved along a little bit. This also doubles up as a pass-through for fans, or if you've got AIO for the RGB, that kind of stuff, you can pass all the wires out through there. A little bit shallow when it comes to cable management on the back here. They do state on the website there's 25mm of cable management, which there is, but not here, there ain't. It's all down in this channel here, which actually there's some Velcro straps. I've taken one of the straps off already, which I've actually put back in here somewhere. So little Velcro straps which go through the panels, and you can cable manage that all down. Again, if you want to see how easy it is to cable manage, check out the live stream and we'll be going through that and seeing if there's any issues. I don't think there's going to be, although I would suggest if you are going to be using this, because it is a slightly smaller case, a modular power supply is going to be ideal, and preferably one with those flat black cables. So other things of note, obviously loads of pass-throughs there for cables. You're going to probably have to put your main ATX power through kind of one of these rather than these ones, again depending on the width of your board. If you're standard micro-ATX, you're going to come out to about here. If you're the extended micro-ATX, then you're going to be coming out to somewhere around here. As you can see, there's the plastic pins for the back of the motherboard, so you'll be going in through that side. All kind of makes sense. You've got the hub here, which is Gamemax's own hub. Again, you can connect up additional addressable RGB, so if you're planning on putting a bunch of fans in here, you can do. You've also got 4-pin PWM options on there. It does work with 3-pin as well. There is a 4-pin PWM connector, which goes to your motherboard, so you plug that in, and you can control all the fans. They'll all run at the same basic speed, so no issues there. They didn't include straight away the RGB connection at the bottom, so there is a female section at the bottom, so you can just use the cable which is included, connect that up, and then connect that to your motherboard for pass-through. At the bottom, those 3 little silver fingers, which you can probably just about make out, that is where you plug in the power, so that takes a SATA connection. It does fit in either way round, so it doesn't make any difference. Some people have found that before to be a little bit of a weird thing, because they've got it all set up, got it all connected up, and not realise you have to connect SATA power to this particular part to get your RGB working for the front and for the fans, and also to power the fan speeds, etc. Taking a look at connectivity, so all the usual stuff here. So you've got your front panel I/O, so power button, reset switch, etc. All that kind of stuff there. You've also got USB 3.0, 2 ports on here, which is really nice to see, rather than the usual kind of USB 2 and a USB 3, so a little bit less cable management to do there. And also you've got your HD audio connector. Also at the bottom, so there is a rack there for putting in hard drives. You can put in a 3.5 or a 2.5 inch drive, so as you can see, there is a 3.5 inch drive, and you just have it with the connections on the bottom there, so nice and easy to get to. This one for 3.5 inch drives doesn't need any screws, it's just a push-on connection, so that's absolutely fine. The bottom one for our 2.5, you can, again, if you want to, put a 3.5 in here, or 2.5s, however you see fit. You do need to put screws into those to actually hold them in place. You can, unfortunately, remove the whole thing in its entirety, which is a little bit of a shame, but there is actually a couple of mountings on the bottom, so if you want to put another 3.5 or 2.5 inch drive actually underneath all the CAD is, there certainly is enough room to do so, should you need to. Although obviously if you're using a mechanical drive, then you may find that the vibrations come through to the rest of the chassis. But yeah, overall, not a bad deal, looks pretty good, does what it needs to do. It's a shame really that it isn't removable, so if you've got a slightly larger power supply, you can have a little bit more room there. Power supply basement section, they've missed a trick here really for vibrations, so there's no rubber pads or anything on there. It is ventilated and filtered, but it would have been nice to see a couple of extra rubber pads there just to take vibrations out of power supplies. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it on this back section, so let's take a look at the bottom. Now you'll probably notice the eagle-eyed amongst you from the B-roll, obviously there is a little bit of tape on here. Reason being is because it has got rubber feet on it rather than being foam or padding, and they were marking the table like crazy, so I put a little bit of electrical tape over those, which again I might put over the RGB hub a little bit later on. Standard filter on here, just one of those flimsy removable ones, and again you can see the screw holes there for mounting drives underneath that cage which is in there. And you've got the front panel section there, so that's the grab handle, pull that off. Yep, all works pretty well. On the top section, so this is our main I/O, so you've got a power button, you've got your power LED and also hard drive LEDs next there, tiny little ones. You've also got a reset switch there. Also, you do have the RGB buttons as well, so you've got a brightness button, so this one on the left hand side is to adjust the various levels of brightness for the addressable RGB, and the next one is the M button, so that's the mode button, so you can switch through built-in modes. If you press and hold the mode button in, it will swap control from your motherboard to the built-in controller and vice versa. Next to that, there is a microphone jack and a headphone jack. Really nice to see 2 separate ports on that. I hate combo ports. Yeah, less said about that the better. Next to that, there's 2 USB 3.0 ports, so that's going to be 5 gigabits per second. On the top, you've also got a magnetic filter. Again, depending how you're using this, then you may want to leave that off, and if you're having a negative pressure setup, so this is going to be your main exhaust, the less restriction the better. You can put in here, like I said, potentially could put 140mm fans in there if you wanted to. There are extra holes there. It's not really designed for it. As you can see, the cutouts are for 120s, but 140s do fit and you can get the screws into them, so that is an option. 280mm radiator, not a chance in hell, that's not going to happen, but 240mm AIO is absolutely fine. So that's pretty much it for a case tour. Let's get this thing fired up and we'll take a look at the RGB. There we go, there is the case lit up. Again, this is probably the key selling point of this particular design of case. And as you can see, it is very reflective depending on what light it's on. It does look really nice in the dark or a slightly more darkened room or one that doesn't have studio lights in it. You've probably seen that for some B-roll already, which we filmed a little bit earlier. I really like the design of this, I really do. And I think they've done a really clever thing by actually making this front section a little bit deeper than what it was previously on the original Abyss. You've just got a little bit more airflow going down the sides. Now, clearly, it's not an airflow optimized chassis. That is clear. But certainly there's enough room for breathing on here. I would suggest for most people, if you're looking to build in this, if you're looking to build a high TDP system, it's probably not the chassis for you, to be completely honest with you. And in fact, Gamemax do tons of other versions of cases which are far more airflow optimized, such as the classic F15M and even some of the smaller ones. So yeah, definitely worth taking a look at those. The Icon as well is one which I certainly would highly recommend if you're looking for a micro-ATX airflow orientated chassis. But let's take a look at the lighting. So we've got the lighting sections here. This is running off their own built-in hub, and you can see the fan in the back is also replicating what is going on. So if you press the brightness button, so that is off, then you've got highest level, and you've got various levels you can adjust. This isn't going to probably come through too well on the camera because the camera's ISO is going to adjust itself accordingly for the different levels. But again, if you don't like it to be super bright, then you can just turn it right down and it isn't too distracting, or turn it off altogether should you wish to. But on its full brightness, I think it looks absolutely great. Pressing the mode button, so you can go through and choose a mode which is appropriate to you, one which is carnival-like or a little bit more steady. Okay, the choice is up to you. Various built-in ones. Obviously, depending what you connect this to, if you connect it to your motherboard and your motherboard has a load of different effects, then obviously you will get more lighting effects that are built in. I think it looks really nice. The whites are pretty good. The colors in general are awesome. It's just a very bright and nice looking PC. It is going to suit a particular type of client, let's be honest about that. Some people aren't going to be kind of all into this lighting. I think personally, if you're using a slightly older system, which doesn't have any RGB or addressable RGB, and you're maybe trying to do a flip system, and you want to have it look more up to date with all this kind of fancy lighting, which generally does bring the crowds in, let's be honest about it. If you're trying to sell a PC on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or something, lots of lights is what gets people's attention. Now, some people just prefer a more kind of static look, a single color, and obviously if you want to do that, you can do that. There are options in here for a single color, so if you want to go for just a static red, you can do. There's flashing effects, all that kind of usual stuff. It would have been nice to have seen a few extra color, just standard colors on their own, maybe just a plain white. I don't think that is entirely possible. I was wondering if you could actually change it, because it just seems to do just a red on its own, which I don't think many people would just go for a standard red. I don't know, maybe if you're doing an AMD build, it would work out well. You've also got your kind of Aurora flow and all that kind of stuff. Lots of options there. The fill, I think this just goes round and round. I wonder if it eventually will get to a static white. I don't think it will. Shame there isn't a handy remote control to go with this as well. That would make life a little bit easier. You get the general idea. There is quite a few different lighting effects on there, your rainbow pukes and that. I kind of like this one. Depending on which angle you're on, it looks deeper and deeper. It is quite strange. If you look at it straight on, which is really hard to show on camera, it just does. It appears to go on forever and ever. So it is a very interesting look. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Let's talk about my final thoughts. Obviously, like I've said, this isn't for high-end systems with tons and tons of heat being put out. This is more for your kind of flip builds or your lower TDP builds. We're actually going to be doing a £400 bargain basement PC build in this, in our live stream, using an APU. So it's going to be very, very low power, but it's just going to look very pretty and it's going to appeal to that Christmas market, which is soon coming up. So that's been it for us today for the Gamemax Abyss Mini. Let us know what you think about this one in the comments section below. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.